As soon as he got to the factory, they told him to put this on. The work uniform my son handed me was sleeveless, with short pants, and it was frayed all over. It happened on the first day my son, who had graduated college with top honors, started his job at an auto parts manufacturing plant. He had left the house with a hopeful look on his face, but came back in less than 30 minutes. Pale and shaken, he told me what Mr. Howard had said to him. "If you can't wear this uniform, go home." When I heard what had happened, I was furious and immediately called. "Mr. Howard, you're fired. Right now. My name is David, and I'm 63 years old. I think of myself as an ordinary man, with being serious as my only real strength. But I've never felt dissatisfied with that. In fact, I believe there's no one luckier than I am. I was born the second son in a very typical white-collar family. Ever since I was a child, I've been fascinated by machines, especially cars. My mother often said I was the kind of kid who could quietly play for hours if you just gave me a toy car. As I got a little older, I would often get scolded for taking apart clocks and small appliances. Naturally, I went on to attend a vocational high school. After graduating, I got a job at an auto parts factory called Martin Industries. Martin Industries is a subcontractor for Sanders Motors, a major car manufacturer. I rented a small apartment near the factory and lived alone, throwing myself into my work every day. The job was physically demanding, but I pushed through with youthful energy. More than anything, I was thrilled to be making parts for the cars I loved so much. When I turned 20, a new office worker named Olivia joined the company. Olivia had just graduated high school and was 18 at the time. She was 2 years younger than me. Since we both walked to work and lived nearby, we naturally started chatting during our commutes. She told me she loved cars too, which is why she joined the company. "If you love cars that much, why didn't you go into manufacturing instead of office work?" When I asked her that, she gave a wry smile. "I wanted to, honestly, but I'm really bad at math and science. Plus, I'm super clumsy. If I made a defective part, someone's life could be at risk. So I gave up on that idea." "That's a shame," I said. When I tried to comfort her, she shook her head. "I've never once thought of it as a shame. I still get to be around cars, even in an office role. I'm really enjoying myself. I'm happy every single day." I found myself more and more drawn to Olivia with her bright and positive attitude. When I finally worked up the courage to ask her out, I was so nervous I thought my heart might jump out of my chest. "Sure, let's go out." She said it so casually, I was almost let down. "What?" "I was really nervous, you know." "Huh? Why?" "Everyone at the company already knows I like you, David. You were the only one who didn't notice." Hearing her laugh as she said that made me fall for her even more. We dated for 5 years. And then we got married. Both Olivia and I loved kids, so we hoped to have a child soon. But even after a few years of marriage, Olivia showed no signs of pregnancy. Eventually, we decided to go to the hospital and get checked. But neither of us had any noticeable issues. We were encouraged to consider fertility treatment, but after talking it over, we decided not to. We had heard that the process could be extremely hard and sometimes strain the relationship between a couple. A child is a gift, right? I think it would be amazing to have one, but if it doesn't happen naturally, then that's just how it is. I agreed with Olivia's way of thinking. You're right. There's no need to push ourselves. Whether we have children or not, we're still husband and wife. If it doesn't happen, we'll just live a happy life together, the two of us. When I said that, Olivia let out a soft laugh. It kind of feels like you just proposed to me all over again. That one was even better than the first. And so, we left everything to nature, but even after 10 years of marriage, we were never blessed with a child. Still, the two of us enjoyed our days together. We traveled, went out for delicious meals, and made wonderful memories. Not only did we cherish our time together, but we also valued our individual time. I was deeply absorbed in building plastic models, a hobby I had since childhood. Olivia, who loved sports, kept busy going to the gym and joining a tennis club. By the time we had been married for 13 years, I was 39 and Olivia was 37. We figured it was unlikely we would ever have children, so we started thinking about a future for just the two of us. A few years into our marriage, we had built a house near the factory. We had even made a room intended to be a child's bedroom, but now it seemed like we would not be needing it. I began thinking maybe I could turn it into a hobby room or put in some training equipment so Olivia could exercise. That's when Olivia mentioned she hadn't been feeling well. We went to the hospital to get her checked, and to our surprise, she was pregnant. I was overjoyed, but also deeply worried. A first pregnancy at the age of 37 was bound to be difficult in many ways. But Olivia just laughed off my concern. I'll be fine. I keep myself in shape. And besides, medicine has come a long way. There's nothing to worry about, even with a later-in-life pregnancy. Well, that's true, you're the picture of health. Even as I continued to worry, Olivia looked at me seriously and said, "This is a child that heaven chose to give us. I'm going to give it my all. But I'm thinking of quitting my job. I'm not as young as I used to be, and raising a child while working would be too much, don't you think?" Her words moved me deeply. Olivia wasn't just thinking about the pregnancy, she was already thinking about what would come after the baby was born. "You're right. My salary has gone up over the years, so we'll manage somehow." Olivia had continued working in the office at Martin Industries. Mr. Martin, the president, said, "It's a huge loss to lose a veteran like Olivia, but it's such a wonderful reason I've got to give her my blessing." He supported her resignation warmly. In our 14th year of marriage, our only son Isaac was born. At the time, I was 40 years old and Olivia was 38. Olivia had such an easy delivery that even the obstetrician was surprised. "This whole parenting thing is tough at our age," Olivia would say. But judging from the joy on her face, she was clearly enjoying every minute of it. Maybe Isaac could sense his mother's hard work. He rarely cried at night and hardly ever got sick. He was an incredibly easygoing baby. However, once Isaac started kindergarten, I began feeling awkward at every school event. Naturally, the other parents were all younger than me. No one actually mistook me for Isaac's grandfather, but as a father in his mid-40s surrounded by younger dads, I definitely stood out. Olivia told me, "Don't worry about it. Just hold your head high." But that didn't make the awkwardness disappear. Olivia, on the other hand, was not only 2 years younger than me to begin with, but she looked much younger than her age. Probably because she stayed so active. Her posture was great, and she looked at least 10 years younger. So even among the young mothers, she never stood out in a bad way. With her straightforward personality, Olivia never hid her age. "Huh? I'm over 40. I was 38 when I had Isaac," she would say, surprising the other mothers around her. Even after hearing her age, none of the mothers pulled away. In fact, they came to her for advice, seeing her as a more experienced voice in life. So Olivia was always surrounded by lots of mom friends. I was proud of her, but I couldn't help feeling a little jealous since I never quite managed to fit in with the younger dads. Raised by such a mother, Isaac grew up to be bright and open-hearted just like her. When he entered elementary school, he was sometimes teased by classmates about his not-so-young parents. But having inherited Olivia's easygoing nature, he brushed it off without a care. Isaac was friendly and cheerful with everyone, so he made lots of friends and enjoyed school life to the fullest. At that time, I was no longer working at Martin Industries. I had moved on to Sanders Motors, an automobile manufacturer. 10 years after I started working at Martin Industries, when I was 28, I was recruited by Sanders Motors through what you'd call a headhunting offer. It happened because someone from Sanders, who happened to be visiting the factory for an inspection, saw how I worked and recognized my efforts. I had never felt more rewarded for my hard work than I did at that moment. When I had first joined the company, many of the college graduates would look down on me simply because I only had a high school diploma. It made me angry, but I believed that letting resentment get to me meant losing. So I ignored their sneers and focused on doing my best. Of course, I didn't have the same knowledge as those with a college education, but I believed the best thing I could do was to face each job in front of me with sincerity, and I worked with that in mind. When I didn't understand something, I would humble myself and ask the college grads for help. Some ignored me, but others kindly taught me, and I slowly filled in the gaps in my knowledge. That's how I spent 10 years. Just when my coworkers started to truly recognize my efforts, the parent company, Sanders Motors, approached me. The employees at Martin Industries were genuinely happy for me and gave me a warm send-off. Even after moving to Sanders Motors, I was still occasionally looked down on for similar reasons. People would make remarks like, "He's just a high school grad," or "He came from a subsidiary," but even so, there were those who appreciated my efforts. Throughout my 30s, I worked with everything I had. Overtime and working weekends were the norm, and during busy seasons I often stayed overnight at the office. My dedication was recognized, and at 44, I was promoted to department manager. As a manager, I focused on creating an environment where my team could perform at their best. Although I still worked late and on weekends myself, I never forced that onto my team. I made sure they had their days off, encouraged employees raising kids to take parental leave, and proposed shorter hours or remote work for those caring for family members. Thanks to that, I earned my team's trust and was promoted to executive at the age of 50. When the previous president retired, I was appointed to take his place. At that time, I was 55 years old. When I became president, Isaac was a 15-year-old in his third year of junior high. He was an excellent student who he took after. I'll never know. He attended a prestigious high school known for its high academic standards. Even there, he maintained top grades, and his homeroom teacher confidently told us he was within the passing range of any university. Toward the end of his second year, Isaac came to me and said, "Dad, I want to talk to you about something. It's about what I want to do after high school. Would it be okay if I went to college?" "Sure, why not? Do you know which college you want to apply to?" I had always assumed Isaac would go to college, so I answered without hesitation. He looked surprised. "Really? I thought you'd tell me to start working right after high school, since that's what you did." True, I had done that, but I never intended to force the same path on him. There's no reason for you to follow the exact same path I did. If you just want to waste 4 years messing around, then I'd say no. But I know you have a purpose, right? When I asked, Isaac nodded and said, his eyes shining, "There's a professor I want to learn from. He's made huge contributions in mechanical engineering. I want to go to the university where he teaches and study under him." "Then that's the school you should go to. You've got the grades for it, don't you?" Isaac showed me his mock exam results. He had received an A ranking for the engineering department of K University, the very place he wanted to go. "You've been interested in mechanical engineering all this time?" "Yeah, I want to design cars someday. I want to do the same kind of work you do." The moment he said that, I couldn't see his face anymore. Tears had welled up in my eyes. Even I was surprised by how moved I was by his words. Seeing my tears, Isaac panicked. "Dad, what's wrong? Are you sick or something?" I didn't say anything, afraid that speaking would make me cry even more. That only made Isaac more flustered. Mom, help. Something's wrong with Dad." Apparently, Olivia had been listening to our conversation because she chuckled quietly and said, "Those are tears of joy. Your father is just overwhelmed with happiness that you want to follow in his footsteps." She said that as she handed me a towel. "Really?" I nodded over and over as I wiped my face roughly with the towel. "Geez, don't scare me like that." Isaac let out a relieved sigh, but then quickly put on a serious face. "I'm going to work hard in college. I want to gain all the knowledge and skills I need so that someday I can create cars that bring joy to many people." At those words, the tears I had just managed to stop came flowing back again. Isaac was successfully admitted to the engineering department at K University, and he joined the seminar of the professor he admired. He poured himself into his studies without distraction, which made me proud, but at the same time, I worried that he might be pushing himself too hard. But Olivia was steadier than I was. He'll be fine. He's just like you were when you were young. He can handle a tough environment. And just as Olivia said, Isaac graduated from K University with excellent grades. After graduation, Isaac chose to work at Martin Industries. Naturally, I had assumed he would join a major automobile company, so I asked him why he made that choice. I had no intention of opposing his decision, but I wanted to understand his reasoning. I want to surpass you, Dad. That's why I want to start on the factory floor, just like you did. I want to build up real experience at Martin Industries and develop the skills to stand on my own at a top automobile company. Isaac didn't want any special treatment from being the son of the president of Sanders Motors, so he kept his background a secret when he applied for a position at Martin Industries. He passed the entrance exam and received a job offer. Then came the spring of the following year. Isaac had graduated and was ready for his first day on the job. He stood at the front door, beaming with hope, and greeted us. "Dad, Mom, I'm heading out. This is your first step as a working adult. Do your best." "Yeah, give it your all." Isaac nodded firmly and headed off to work. As we watched him walk away, Olivia and I instinctively reached for each other's hands. He's really grown up, in both body and spirit. Yes, that seriousness of his, he gets it from you. That's why I have no worries. Someday, we'll be riding in a car he designed. Yes, I can't wait. Imagining a bright future ahead, we looked at each other and smiled. After seeing Isaac off, I started getting ready for work myself. That's when we heard the front door open. Wondering what was going on, Olivia and I stepped into the entryway, and there was Isaac. He stood there frozen in shock, unable to move. His face was shockingly pale. In his arms, he was holding what looked like a work uniform. I knew immediately that something was wrong. What happened? I glanced at the clock. It hadn't even been 30 minutes since he left. The factory was only a 10-minute walk from home. That meant he hadn't even been there for 10 minutes. Dad. Isaac, holding back tears, unfolded the uniform in his hands. I noticed that his hands were trembling. "What is that?" "It's completely torn up." At Olivia's words, I took a closer look and realized how bizarre the uniform really was. The top was just a thin t-shirt. There was a cartoonishly distorted pig drawn on the chest. It had probably been a short-sleeved shirt, but the sleeves had been cut off with scissors. The pants were basically short shorts. They had clearly once been standard work pants, but had been cut off above the knees. Both the shirt and pants had been roughly chopped with scissors, the edges were jagged, and loose threads dangled from the seams. What is that uniform supposed to be? As soon as I got to the factory, they told me to wear this. I was too shocked to respond. No factory worker would ever be expected to work dressed like that. First of all, it was dangerous. Isaac, of course, understood that perfectly. "So I told them," he said. "I explained that in a factory where there's welding and other such work, long-sleeved shirts and full-length pants are essential. I said this outfit wasn't safe for work, and it violated company policy." "You were absolutely right. Having worked at Martin Industries myself, I knew the company regulations. Wearing long-sleeved tops and full-length pants is a strict requirement." Then he yelled at me, said a rookie like me shouldn't be mouthing off. "Who did it?" I asked. The answer surprised me. "Mr. Howard. He was the one who handed me this uniform too." "James?" I couldn't believe it. But what Isaac told me next was even more unbelievable. He said, "If you can't wear this uniform, then go home." But how could I? I'm not talking about how it looks, it's just way too dangerous to wear something like this in a factory. You made the right decision. Still trying to make sense of why James would do something like that, I stood there, baffled. Then Olivia, who had been quiet until now, spoke. "There were other new hires besides Isaac, right?" Did James make them wear the same uniform? Isaac shook his head. No, just me. The other new employees were given standard work uniforms. What does that mean? Why only you? Then, Isaac finally told us something he had been holding back. I'm not sure why, but even during the pre-employment training, Mr. Howard acted strangely toward me. His attitude toward Isaac had been clearly different from how he treated the others. The other trainees were praised no matter what they did, but Isaac was criticized no matter what. Even when I asked questions about things I didn't understand, I was the only one he ignored. Why didn't you tell me back then? I asked. Isaac gave a small, embarrassed smile. I'm 23. I didn't want to go crying to my parents. Besides, it was only Mr. Howard who acted that way. During the training period, Mr. Howard had only directly supervised them a few times. The rest of the time, various other employees took turns training them. And all of them treated Isaac just like any other employee, so he tried not to let it bother him. Even this morning, when I got that uniform, the other employees looked really uncomfortable. I think it was all Mr. Howard's doing. I see, I understand now. But I couldn't contain the anger bubbling up in my chest. It was a mix of anger toward James himself and anger at myself for failing to see the kind of person he really was. I couldn't tell which feeling was stronger. James Howard had joined Martin Industries when I was 23. He had to give up on high school because of family circumstances and started working right after middle school. He was assigned as my subordinate, but back then, he was bitter and insecure because of his lack of education. At least from what I saw, no one openly mocked him for being a middle school graduate, but maybe it happened behind his back. I said to him, "Your education doesn't matter. What's important is how hard you're willing to work. Even if someone graduated from a top university, if they sit back and stop trying, they won't grow. You can beat them with effort." When I realized I couldn't go to high school, I honestly thought my life was over. James had once told me, most good companies require a college degree, at least a high school diploma. But middle school? I figured I was done for. He had fallen into a deep pit of despair, and I kept encouraging him. You're only 15. Don't talk like your life is over. Your future is in your hands. No, you're the only one who can shape it. I'm the only one who can shape it. That's right. Work hard, and one day, prove those elite graduates who mocked you completely wrong. Little by little, as I repeated those words, James' expression began to brighten. James had always been quick on the uptake, and within just a few years, he had learned almost every aspect of the job. He became one of the top workers at Martin Industries. 5 years after James joined the company, I was recruited by Sanders Motors. At that time, James had just turned 20. Congratulations, David, you're incredible. The folks at Sanders Motors really have a good eye for talent to have picked you out. James said those words with genuine warmth, but immediately after, he gave a strange, unsettling smile. Serves those college grads right. They always acted superior with their fancy degrees, but now it's the high school grad David who's been recognized by the parent company. His words made me feel a little uneasy. There were plenty of college graduates at Martin Industries, but I didn't recall any of them flaunting their education. Had they treated James that way without me noticing? I began to wonder, but then he went on. Heh, serves them right. I'm going to follow your lead, David, and put those college boys in their place. I've always told you education doesn't matter. Just focus on your own efforts. I had meant to say that not all people with degrees are arrogant, but James seemed to misinterpret my words. Exactly. Just because I only finished middle school doesn't mean I have to bow down to those college types. I wanted to correct him that wasn't what I meant at all, but unfortunately, I didn't have time right then. After that, since we were working at different companies, I didn't get many chances to see James, and that conversation was left unresolved. It stayed on my mind for a long time. A few years later, I had the chance to visit Martin Industries. James had become a mid-level manager by then, and he had a great reputation with both his superiors and his subordinates. He worked quickly and thoroughly. His immediate supervisor praised him as a reliable worker who not only handled his own tasks well, but also supported others with quiet care. His subordinates said he never yelled when they made mistakes and always gave patient guidance. When they had personal concerns, he offered heartfelt advice. I could tell their praise was sincere, and I felt relieved that my earlier worries had been unfounded. "You're doing great, James. I'm proud of you." When I praised him, James gave a shy smile. "It's all thanks to you, David. Whenever I'm unsure about something, I always ask myself, what would David do? So really, who I am now, I owe it to you." "No, that's not true. The person you've become is the result of your own effort. Keep up the good work." At the time, I was convinced James would be just fine. Though we didn't interact privately after that, every time I visited Martin Industries for business, I saw how hard James was working. When I was promoted to department manager and later to executive, James celebrated each time as if it were his own achievement and sent me congratulatory gifts. And since he was also steadily rising through the ranks, I made sure to send him gifts in return on each of his milestones. Shortly after I became president of Sanders Motors, the president of Martin Industries announced his retirement due to age. Normally, the vice president would have succeeded him, but he too was nearing retirement and didn't seem eager to take the position. At the time, James was 48. When I asked, "What about James?" both the president and vice president agreed. There were others older than James and with higher ranks, but they decided to appoint James as president, skipping over the hierarchy. When he was officially named president, James wept with joy. "Thank you so much, David. I can never repay what you've done for me. I'll spend my life trying to give back." He bowed again and again, and I said, "You don't need to repay me. If you really want to, then make Martin Industries stronger than ever. That's all I ask." "Yes, I'll give it everything I have. I'll make sure we become an indispensable asset to Sanders Motors." True to his word, James worked hard. Under his leadership, Martin Industries saw steady growth. You could even say that the success of Sanders Motors was thanks in large part to the work of Martin Industries. 7 years have passed since James became president. He should be 55 now. In the past year, Martin Industries' performance has dipped slightly. I was concerned, but in a long career, these things happen and the economic climate hasn't been ideal either. I figured it was just a rough patch. That's why I had no objection when Isaac said he wanted to join Martin Industries. But after what happened today, everything now seems questionable. There's no way Isaac would lie, and we had the undeniable evidence of that torn-up uniform. I told Isaac to wait in my study, then picked up the phone to call James. I could have gone directly to the factory, but I wasn't confident I could stay calm. So I asked Olivia to stay by my side. If I start to lose my temper and say something harsh, stop me. Olivia nodded. "I'd like to say there's no way you'd lose your cool, but after seeing Isaac like that, it's hard, isn't it?" "I'm furious too. I can hardly stand it." Of course, Olivia was just as pained as I was. I took a deep breath and called James. He picked up after a single ring. "Mr. Norton, it's been a while. This is James." He answered the phone in his usual cheerful tone. Hearing that familiar lightness in his voice, it was hard to believe he had done something so outrageous. A part of me still hoped this was all some misunderstanding. "Mr. Howard, I have something I need to ask you." He chuckled on the other end. "Come on, don't be so formal. Mr. Howard sounds way too distant. Just call me James like always." "James, I need to ask you something." When I repeated myself in a firm tone, James seemed to sense the tension and replied in a slightly nervous voice. "Is something wrong? Did I mess something up?" Out of respect for Isaac, who had gone to great lengths to keep his identity as the son of the Sanders Motors president a secret, I decided not to mention that part. "I just heard something that caught my attention," I said. I asked if it was true that, this morning, a new employee was given a uniform consisting of a sleeveless shirt and short pants. "Oh, that? Yes, it's true. I gave a new employee a uniform with a sleeveless top and short pants. Why would you do that? I couldn't help but raise my voice. Olivia gently grabbed my arm to calm me down. I took another deep breath and asked again. Wearing a sleeveless shirt and shorts in a factory is dangerous. Why would you give someone something like that? And I heard it wasn't given to everyone, just one person. It was just a bit of fun, or maybe you could call it a punishment, a way to teach him a lesson. He had no guts. Ran right back home without even changing into it. James spoke with an air of amusement, as if he'd done nothing wrong. I was stunned that he could sound so cheerful after doing something so outrageous. A punishment? A lesson? Did this person do something wrong? I couldn't stand that guy from the moment the pre-employment training began. James continued in a bitter tone. First of all, he's a graduate of K University's engineering department. That's impressive. Why would that be a problem? James responded in a shocked tone, as if he couldn't believe I was defending that. I didn't expect to hear that from Mr. Norton. Just because someone graduates from a top university doesn't mean they're competent. Besides, a K University grad working for us instead of a company like Sanders? That's suspicious. There has to be something behind it. There was no behind it. Isaac just wanted to follow the same path I had taken. That was all. But I said nothing and continued listening. James went on, spilling his complaints about Isaac. On the first day of training, he said Isaac proudly declared his K University degree and went on about the difficult research he had done. He acted condescending toward the other high school graduates, and when he found out I had only finished middle school, he barely reacted. I decided he was a bad fit for the company, so I started ignoring him during training, but he couldn't take the hint and joined anyway. That's why I gave him the sleeveless outfit. I wanted to show him this isn't a place for people like you. So that was it. The only reason James treated Isaac so harshly was because he had a college degree. But I knew exactly what Isaac had really done. He never bragged about his education. He never looked down on high school or middle school grads. The only reason he knew James' academic background at all was because I had mentioned it to him. But in James' eyes, clouded by a deep inferiority complex, Isaac must have seemed arrogant and dismissive. Even though James had ignored him during training, the other employees had treated him properly, which is why Isaac hadn't withdrawn his application. James didn't feel disrespected by Isaac, he simply projected his own insecurities onto him. The unease I had felt years ago when I left Martin Industries for Sanders Motors had been justified after all. Maybe I should have made things clear back then. After that conversation, James seemed to be getting along well with everyone, and I let myself believe all was fine, but clearly that was a mistake. This is a situation where I have to take responsibility. I see. Understood. You do? I knew you would. James' voice brightened, full of delight. I just knew President Norton would understand. You're a high school graduate too, you get it, right? The best thing to do with these college kids is crush them early. No, that's not it. When I said I understood, I meant that I understand now. You have a deep academic inferiority complex. What? What are you talking about? James' voice rose in surprise. I don't have anything like that. Sure, maybe in the past, but it was you, David, who helped me get over it. You were the one who said education doesn't matter. That's true. I did say that, but I never meant that high school or middle school graduates are better and college grads are worthless. I wouldn't expect to hear that from David, the high school graduate who became president of Sanders Motors. James said with a tone of clear displeasure. Realizing just how deeply rooted his mindset was, I tried my best to reason with him. Yes, I became a president with only a high school diploma, but I didn't get here on my own. I learned from college grads, and I relied on those who had only middle school educations too. I kept trying to explain that a person's true worth is determined not by whether they graduated from college or only finished middle school, but by their individual ability and effort. Yet James just couldn't seem to understand. I've worked so hard all these years just to prove those college guys wrong. That drive is what pushed me forward. I've never needed help from any of them. Is that really how you feel? I asked. James answered confidently, without the slightest hesitation. It is. I've crushed every college graduate who got in my way. That's how I improve this company's performance. We don't need college graduates at all. So that's why you handed that uniform to the new hire. Exactly. A college kid, especially one flaunting his K university degree. I didn't want to work with someone like that for even a day. His shouting was loud enough that even Olivia, standing nearby, could hear it. She looked at me with concern, and I nodded back to reassure her. But inside, I was overwhelmed not with anger, but disbelief at just how deeply James' complex had warped him. I see now. Appointing you as president was my mistake. That's on me, so I won't fire you, but I can't allow you to stay in that position. I need you to submit your resignation by the end of today. What? What are you talking about? Just because I gave some arrogant college grad a hard time, I have to resign. I held back a sigh and told him calmly. He's not some arrogant college graduate. He studied mechanical engineering seriously at university. He came to Martin Industries to apply that knowledge and work toward designing cars in the future. What is this nonsense? James scoffed, clearly mocking the idea. Are you saying he truly wasn't fit to work at Martin Industries? Just because he's a K University graduate, you wrote him off entirely. That's no different than mocking someone for being a middle school graduate. If you can't see a person's true value, you have no business being president. How'd you know what kind of person he is, David? You've never even met him. I didn't want to say it, but I knew James wouldn't back down unless I did. What's his name? His name? What was it again? You can't even remember the name of a new employee? I finally snapped and shouted. Olivia didn't stop me this time. She was just as upset. His name is Isaac. He's my son. What? Seriously? James let out a voice of disbelief, unable to accept what he had just heard. Then I heard the sound of papers flipping. He was probably looking through the new employees' resumes. It's true, Isaac, but he never said a word about being the president's son. He asked me to keep it quiet. He didn't want any special treatment just because his father is the president of the parent company. If I had known, I wouldn't have done something like that. As James continued to grumble under his breath, I realized there was no saving this. He was beyond reason. If he would have treated Isaac differently knowing he was my son, then it meant he deliberately mistreated him simply because he wasn't. If you had looked closely at Isaac's arsom, you should have noticed. He has the same last name, and since he still lives at home, his address is the same as mine. Well, now that you mention it, I did think his name was the same as yours when I first saw it, James stammered. But he seemed too young to be your son, and too old to be your grandson, so I just figured he must be someone else. That made me recall something. James had sent his congratulations when I was promoted, but he hadn't said a word when Isaac was born. In other words, he'd never taken the slightest interest in my personal life. Olivia had worked in administration at Martin Industries for years, and the reason she left was because of childbirth. If he'd been paying any attention at all, he would have figured it out. Clearly, the only thing James ever cared about was his own career advancement. The people around him meant nothing. There was no doubt anymore James was unfit to be a company president. I had no intention of continuing the conversation. In any case, submit your resignation by the end of today. If not, you'll be dismissed. That was all I said before hanging up the phone. James tried calling back, but I immediately blocked the number. Less than 10 minutes later, the doorbell rang. When Olivia opened the door, James was standing there. His hair was a mess and his shirt soaked with sweat. It looked like he had run all the way. The moment he saw me, he dropped to his knees at the entrance. I'm so sorry. When I didn't respond, he cautiously looked up. I'd also like to apologize to Isaac, if I may. His eyes pleaded for forgiveness, and Olivia went to call Isaac. Still dressed in his suit and holding the now infamous uniform, Isaac came to the entrance. Isaac, I was terribly rude to you. Please accept my apology, and I'll have a new uniform prepared for you so I hope you'll start fresh tomorrow. Isaac stepped down to the entrance level and asked, "Are you referring to this uniform when you say you were rude? This ridiculous outfit with the cartoon pig? Of course, it's completely inappropriate. Of course you wouldn't wear something so embarrassing." James began to explain, but Isaac cut him off. "Please don't misunderstand. I didn't refuse to wear it because it looked foolish. I refused because it was dangerous. I couldn't work for a company whose president would hand out uniforms that could cause injury or burns." Crushed by Isaac's words, James collapsed where he knelt, unable to speak. I ignored James and turned to Isaac. "James will be leaving Martin Industries. We haven't chosen the next president yet, but I'll be very careful in selecting the right person. So I want you to focus on doing your best there." But kind-hearted as he is, Isaac looked worried about James. After all, James probably had a family of his own. Forcing him to resign on the spot might be too harsh. I felt a small twinge of sympathy. "James, look at me." He raised his tear and sweat-streaked face. "Go home for now. You're under house suspension. I'll consider your situation and let you know what I decide." "Does that mean you'll forgive me?" He gave a pitiful smile. "Were you not listening? I said I'd consider it. I didn't say I was forgiving you. Now go home quietly." James lowered his shoulders and left our house. The next day, I went to Martin Industries and conducted interviews with the plant manager and other staff. That's when a lot came to light about James. For the first 5 years of his presidency, James had done well. But in the past 2 years, things had gradually changed. He had started to target employees with college degrees. Whenever a problem occurred, he almost always pinned the blame on them. In fact, several college graduates had quit after suffering from harassment and mistreatment. Some had even fallen into depression. When complaints were raised, James reportedly said, "I'm President Norton's favorite at Sanders Motors. There's no point in resisting me. Anyone who does is getting fired." After hearing everything, I realized there was no saving him. I summoned James to inform him of my decision. When James arrived, he must have seen the stern expression on my face and guessed the outcome. Even before I said a word, he began to plead. "President Norton, you've always looked out for me, haven't you? Couldn't you show me some mercy?" I cut him off. "You worked hard when you were young, that's true. But what about now? Haven't you just sat back in the president's chair and done whatever you pleased?" I listed, one by one, the misdeeds I had heard from the plant managers. James lowered his head in shame. "You've thrown away all the effort you built up over the years. It's a real shame, James." Realizing that there was nothing more to say, James wrote his resignation on the spot and left in tears. I don't know much about what happened to him after that. I heard through the grapevine that he hadn't been able to find another job and was scraping by with day labor. Since I had blocked his number on my phone, he called my home landline and the president's office at Sanders Motors a few times. Apparently, he was asking to be rehired, but I never took the call, so I don't know the details. As for Isaac, he went back to work the very next day with his usual energy. I appointed the former plant manager as the new president of Martin Industries. He reached out to the college graduates who had quit because of James and offered to rehire them if they were willing to return. Isaac seems to be getting along well with his coworkers at the factory. "Someday, I'll surpass you, Dad." As he handed us the gift he bought with his first paycheck, Isaac said those words with a face full of hope, and Olivia and I exchanged a quiet, knowing smile.